Hey everyone, it's April 10th, 2022, time's about 17:10 CDT, and it's Geo-Rant time. Geo-Rant number 198, and I'm going to talk a little bit today just about science communication, essentially. Hopefully this won't be too long. My lichen planus is starting to heal. It's almost gone on my right arm. Got a little on the hand yet. But anyway, that's why they took the biopsy to figure out what it was. Sorry, I digress. I just noticed you could see it really well because I was out in the sun. So anyway, you put steroids in his hand. Anyway, it's not contagious or anything like that. It's an autoimmune reaction. Anyway, I digress. In science communication, and I'm really surprised there's grown adults who don't realize this. When I'm communicating to you guys, I assume I'm communicating with informed adults, okay? And I can get over technical, but, just ask me and I'll elaborate. You guys do that. I'm not talking about you guys, okay? I'm talking about the people who are very overconfident in their ignorance. Let's just put it that way. And you guys can figure out who that is. I'm pretty sure you're smart people. It includes many people, conspiracy theorists, young earth creationists, all those people. Anyway, that aside, I notice when I'm trying to relay something to them as a scientist who looks at other science communicators' work, they tend to take everything, like they'll get it in their head that something's a certain way, and they'll believe it just because they were told to believe it or whatever. I don't, whatever the reason. And they'll find some obscure science communication article to back up that thing. And they're usually definition wranglers too. Not all the time. I mean, there's some good time. There's times where definition wrangling is appropriate, but they'll just go on that and then they'll be like, hey, you're wrong, Steve. I don't know what kind of scientist you are, but just this institution that does this, put out this article and see they use this word in here. But yeah, it's not a technical term. And I read the article and I realize the target audience is just the general adult public who isn't educated in that at all. It's just, you're going to speak towards your target audience the best you can. And I know I get a little too technical from time to time, but I am not going to talk to a 7-year-old about, I don't know, we'll say rock, ductile deformation, okay? I'm not going to talk to a 7-year-old the same way I'm going to talk to a 37-year-old about it. Because the 37-year-old, even if they didn't go to college or whatever, they're just going to have learned more through life experience or whatever, and they probably took some geology in high school or whatever, and may remember it and occasionally, may be interested in it, because if you're watching me, you're probably interested in it to begin with. So I'm going to talk to you completely differently than I would a 7-year-old. I'm not going to describe ductile deformation to a 7-year-old like this. I am not going to say that sedimentary rocks can undergo plastic deformation according to stress-strain relationships and behave according to fluid mechanics more than solids under confined pressure and compression. They will tend to form things like anticlines, synclines, recumbrant folds, chevron folds. A 7-year-old's going to look at me like this. And rightfully so. Because they don't know what any of that means. They have no clue. I would describe ductile deformation of sedimentary rocks like this to a 7-year-old. First of all, I'm going to mention rock beds. See, as an adult talking to you, I know you know what rock beds are, what beds of rock. I know you know what that is. But I'm going to say something more like rock sediments get deposited relatively flat, and they'll get buried. And if they'll undergo pressure from the sides, and they'll become deformed, they'll bend, they'll warp, and they'll form distinct patterns over time as long as that pressure keeps going. And that's probably how I would say it. And and that might be too technical for a 7-year-old. But if I'm speaking more generally, just to adults in general, I have to find somewhere between there. Okay, but I will use technical terms, but I must tell you what they are if I'm going to do that. I'm not just going to use really lay terms. So this is something us science educators desperately struggle with all the time, is our target audience, because a lot of times it's not defined. If I do a YouTube video, anybody can come to it. It's not, I know my videos, and you guys know my videos generally aren't meant for anyone under, high school level, not because it's raunchy or anything like that. It's just because I talk more technical. I talk for adults and young adults. I don't speak for small children. There's tons of intro geology courses to get children interested in it online. They use cool graphics, have attractive people speaking, and all that other stuff that I don't do. All right. So I'm speaking to you as adults, as a professional. All right. So it's really hard sometimes to do that for you guys. And that's why I started the Teachable thing. It's a lot more technical, because I want you to have a bigger base knowledge, and I want people who are studying for the PG or in school or have a firm understanding of geology, wanted to do it, just never got, life got in the way, that kind of stuff. So, stuff gets complicated. And I don't know everything about geology. I'm really good at structural geology, stratigraphy, a certain kind of geochronology anyway. And I consider myself overall, a, structural geologist, a stratigrapher, and a petrologist to a limited degree, and geochronologist too. But these aren't easy things, okay? And we, as science communicators, see, I'm starting to ramble. I'm sorry. I'm going to wrap this up here. But us as science communicators don't always know our target audience. We don't always write for our target or for specific age and education ranges. I mean, if I'm going to write something like this, it's for a geology major who's a junior or a senior. That's a very narrow range. But I'm going to be more general. And you might sit there and, a medical journal or a medical institute, even though, is medicine science? Well, we're not going to deal with that. But they have their own language. And when they put stuff up for posts online, they might be speaking generally. Like, they might be speaking to new mothers or something like that. Like, I had this one guy who was arguing with me about what a baby was, as if I cared. I'm like, what's going on? Why are you doing this? I'm like, and it wasn't even about abortion or anything like that. It was just not about that. And I'm like, baby's not, because I know somebody who does pediatric work, and they've told me that in the community, within pediatrics, nobody uses the word baby. Okay? I don't remember what the first one is, and then it's embryonic, and then it's something like, what is it, fetus, and then infant, and then, something like that. I don't know. I didn't memorize it all. I don't remember everything. So that's what they used when talking to one another and writing papers. Just like I'm going to talk about folds in a very technical way in geology. And this person was like, well, they used the word baby in there. And I'm reading the article, and I'm like, yeah, this is for new mothers. Not, a very small percentage of new mothers are not only doctors, medical doctors, but are pediatricians. So they're going to use generic words that everybody knows. So people, and it's usually overconfident people who do this stuff. And I try to know when I'm ignorant of something. I know what I'm ignorant in most of the times, but sometimes I don't. And there are times when in my life, I have got a little overconfident in my knowledge base about stuff I'm not very familiar with. But most of the time I catch myself, and I'm just like, oh yeah, I'm ignorant. I need to be quiet now, or I need to refer this person to someone who knows about this, or whatever. And that's not a sign of stupidity, and it's not a sign of weakness. Saying I don't know is fine, even as a professional. It's perfectly okay. Screwing up is perfectly okay. But to the overconfident and the arrogant, They don't make mistakes in their minds. They're completely confirmation bias driven and emotionally driven, and they don't see it. And that's dangerous. If you can't be critical of yourself, how can you be critical of anything else around you? Anyway, that's it. This is over 10 minutes. If you guys have any questions or comments, please leave them below, and I hope you learned something.